For nearly 10 years, women kept disappearing from the streets of Asheville, North Carolina. One after another, late at night, alone, vulnerable. Then their bodies began appearing deep in the woods outside the city, dumped in silence, hidden among trees and dirt roads, as if someone believed they would never be found. Police suspected a serial killer, but what made this case truly disturbing was that even after arrests were made, the murders didn't stop, and decades later, people still question whether the real killer was ever caught at all. The serial killer nobody talked about, until now. Between 1987 and 1997, Asheville became the center of a terrifying mystery that few people outside North Carolina ever heard about. Women began vanishing from the streets around downtown Asheville and nearby highways. Most of the victims lived difficult lives. Some struggled with addiction. Others were involved in sex work. Many disappeared without immediate investigations, receiving major attention. Then the bodies started being discovered in remote wooded areas outside Buncombe County. Some had been strangled. Others showed signs of violent assault, and investigators quickly realized several cases looked connected. The similarities were impossible to ignore. Women disappearing from similar locations, bodies abandoned in isolated forests, victims targeted in nearly identical ways. Fear slowly spread across Asheville because for years, nobody knew who was responsible. As investigators searched for answers, one name eventually entered the investigation: Henry Louis Wallace. Known later as the Charlotte Strangler, Wallace was already suspected in multiple murders across North Carolina during the early 1990s. When questioned, Wallace confessed to killing several women, including some connected to the Asheville murders. At first, investigators believed they finally had their killer, a serial predator moving between cities, a man responsible for years of violence. But then, problems began appearing in the investigation because some details didn't fully match. And even more disturbing, some murders connected to the Asheville pattern happened after Wallace had already been arrested, which raised a terrifying possibility. What if there was another killer, another predator operating in Asheville at the exact same time? Investigators also linked two other murders to entirely different men, meaning multiple killers may have been targeting vulnerable women across North Carolina during the same decade. And suddenly, the case became far more complicated than anyone expected. Authorities officially confirmed that at least two of the Asheville murders were connected. But despite years of investigations, many cases remained unresolved. Witnesses disappeared, evidence was limited, and forensic technology at the time was far less advanced than it is today. Families waited years for answers. Some victims received little media attention. Others were barely discussed outside local newspapers. And because many victims came from vulnerable backgrounds, some people believed the cases were never treated with the urgency they deserved. Meanwhile, rumors spread throughout Asheville. People whispered about multiple predators, truck drivers, local offenders, unknown men targeting women late at night. And as fear grew, so did the frustration. Because even after confessions and arrests, the killings remained surrounded by uncertainty. What makes the Asheville murders so disturbing is that there was never one clear answer. Henry Louis Wallace confessed to some killings. Other murders were solved separately to different suspects, but several cases still officially remain unsolved to this day, and investigators have never fully explained whether all the murders were connected or whether multiple serial predators were operating across North Carolina at the same time. That uncertainty still haunts the families, because without definitive answers, closure never truly comes. Only theories, questions, and silence. And perhaps the most terrifying part of all is that the murders appeared to continue, even after one suspected serial killer was already behind bars. Maybe investigators caught one killer. Maybe they caught several, or maybe the real story of Asheville was far darker than anyone realized. Because sometimes the scariest serial killer cases aren't the ones with obvious answers. They're the ones where nobody can say for certain how many killers were truly out there. And somewhere in the forests outside Asheville, some secrets may still remain buried forever.